Before I read you these 3 stories tonight, I want you to do one thing. Check your doors. Lock them if they aren't already. Because the people who lived through what you were about to hear, they all thought exactly what you're probably thinking right now, that they were safe. Nothing unusual ever happens in places like these. 3 in the morning is just another quiet hour in a quiet shift. They were wrong. And by the time you finish listening tonight, you may never look at an empty road the same way again. Welcome to True Terror Files Official. Tonight, we go somewhere the light barely reaches. Tonight, we have 3 accounts submitted to this channel. 3 stories from 3 different people, working 3 very different locations across America. All connected by one terrifying thread. They were alone. It was late, and something happened that has no reasonable explanation. Our first account comes from Derek, a 34-year-old cashier in rural Texas, who spent 7 months working the overnight shift at a truck stop called Lone Star 24. Until one specific customer appeared on a Tuesday night and changed everything he thought he understood about the living and the dead. Our second story comes from Melissa, a 28-year-old fuel attendant at an isolated gas station along Route 9 in western Montana, where a car arrived after midnight with no one inside. And the only sound that came from it was a woman's voice she still hears in her sleep. And our third story comes from Thomas, a 41-year-old night manager at a flying night J truck stop on the edge of the Nevada desert, where for 3 consecutive weeks, the men's bathroom camera cut to static at exactly 2:02 a.m. when Thomas finally went to check in person on the 4th Tuesday. He saw something in the mirror that made him walk out of that building and never go back. Stay with us. These stories were written by the people who survived them. Derek Calloway had been working the overnight shift at Lone Star 24 for almost 7 months. When he first noticed the man in the green jacket, the truck stop sat on a stretch of county road outside Harlingen, Texas, 40 minutes from the nearest town, wedged between flat nothing on all sides. The kind of place where the fluorescent lights buzzed so loud at 2 a.m. that Derek would press his fingernails into his palm just to hear a sound that wasn't electric. The regular crowd was sparse and predictable, a handful of long-haul truckers. The occasional couple driving through the night, maybe a rancher stopping for cigarettes. Derek knew all the faces eventually. The man in the green jacket first came in on a Tuesday at precisely 3:17 a.m. And Derek remembered the time because his phone buzzed with an alarm he'd forgotten to delete from college. The man was older, late 60s, wearing a faded canvas jacket with a truckline logo Derek didn't recognize. A John Deere hat pulled low, and work boots caked with dried mud along the sole, moved slowly but without hesitation. The way men who have been driving for 20 years always move, purposeful, unhurried, comfortable inside their own exhaustion. He didn't say much. He pulled a $20 bill from his chest pocket, placed it on the counter, said in a low, dry voice, "Large coffee. Keep the change." Derek made the coffee. The man nodded once, turned, and walked back out to a large gray Peterbilt parked near the west edge of the lot. Taillights pulled away at exactly 3:22 a.m. Derek thought nothing of it. But the following Tuesday at 3:17 a.m., the man was back. Same jacket, same hat, same $20 bill pressed flat and precise on the counter. Same words, "Large coffee. Keep the change." And the Tuesday after that, and the Tuesday after that, for 8 consecutive weeks, without variation. The man in the green jacket arrived at 3:17 and was gone by 3:22. Derek began to find the routine oddly comforting. He started having the coffee ready. Then, on the 9th Tuesday, A cross-country driver named Sandra came through around midnight, and when Derek mentioned his 3 a.m. regular, almost as small talk, Sandra set down her cup and went very still. She asked Derek to describe the man. Derek did. Older, green jacket, gray Peterbilt, John Deere hat, mud on the boots, always paid with a 20. Sandra looked at the window. Then she looked back at her cup. And then, in a voice that had gone completely flat, she said, "That sounds like Raymond Haas. Ray used to run this stretch every week for 20 years. Derek waited. Sandra said, "Ray died 6 years ago. Wife called me after the funeral. I found him in his cab." Parked right about where that gray Peterbilt always sits. Derek told himself she had the wrong person. He told himself this right up until the following Tuesday, when he finally reviewed the security camera footage. The camera above the register was angled directly at the counter. Every frame showed Derek clearly making the coffee, reaching across, the transaction occurring. But in every single frame where the man in the green jacket should have been standing, there was nothing. The counter. The $20 bill appearing from nowhere. Derek's hands lifting a cup toward empty air. No person, no body, or no presence that the camera could see. Derek finished his shift, drove home, and submitted his resignation by email before he reached his driveway. He kept 3 of the $20 bills pressed flat between the pages of a notebook he no longer opens. He says he doesn't know why he kept them, except that throwing them away felt like something you shouldn't do with money that came from wherever it came from. Melissa Crane was 28 years old and had worked the midnight 2-6 shift at Flat Creek. Gas on Route 9 for just over a year when the car arrived. The station was 4 miles from the nearest house. Set back from the 2-lane road by a gravel apron and a pair of old pump islands. No one had updated since the early 2000s. Montana quiet is a specific kind of quiet. The kind where the absence of sound becomes its own sound. A low pressurized hum behind your ears that makes you hyper aware of every small noise your body produces. Melissa was reading in the break room at 1:45 a.m. when the sensor bell above the pumps rang. A white sedan had stopped at the far pump, a late model 4-door. Unremarkable except for one detail, there was no one in it. Driver's seat empty. Passenger seat empty. Back seats empty. She stood at the window and waited for a door to open. For someone to step out who had been below the sight line. For a logical explanation to walk itself into the frame. Nothing moved. She went to the door and stepped out onto the apron, keeping the door frame behind her as an anchor. The night smelled like pine and cold asphalt. The white sedan sat perfectly still, under the orange glow of the pump light engine running. Exhaust misting faintly, all 4 windows up, nothing moving inside. She walked closer, with the careful slowness of someone approaching something they suspect they shouldn't. When she got within 10 feet, the radio came on, country station out of Missoula that she recognized. 2 seconds of a song's tail end, and then the station dissolved to static. And out of that static, a woman's voice spoke. It had the quality of a voice heard through water, slightly softened, slightly too close, as if it was coming from inside her own head, rather than from the car's speakers. It was not a long message. It was 4 words, delivered with the flat, "K," unhurried certainty of a statement rather than a question. She's not coming home. Melissa's feet moved backward before she decided to move them. She went inside, locked the door, and stood at the window watching the white sedan for 40 minutes. At exactly 2:38 a.m., it pulled out of the lot and turned north on Route 9. She got the plate number. She filed a report the next morning. The detective called her back 2 days later, speaking with the measured care of someone selecting every word with precision. The plates came back registered to a 2007 Honda Accord owned by a woman named Carol Weber, age 49, of Missoula, reported missing 14 months earlier. Case unsolved. The car had been logged as evidence. It was currently held in an impound lot in Missoula. There was no record of it being released. There was no record of it having left. Melissa has since moved to Billings. She does not drive at night if she can avoid it. She told investigators that what disturbs her most is not the voice itself, but what she understood in the moment she heard it, that whoever or whatever was in that car had not come to speak to her, that she had intercepted a message not meant for the living, that something had said its piece on a dark Montana road, and it hadn't cared who received it. Thomas Vega had managed the overnight shift at the Flying J on Highway 93 for 4 years, and in those 4 years he had dealt with broken equipment, a diesel spill, employees who quit mid-shift, and a man who refused to leave the parking lot for 36 hours. And none of it had prepared him for the bathroom. It started on a Tuesday in late October, when the men's restroom camera, one of 8 interior cameras, Thomas monitored from the back office, went to static at exactly 2:02 a.m. He flagged maintenance, assumed a connection issue, and thought nothing more of it. The following Tuesday at 2:02 a.m., the same camera went to static again. By the third Tuesday, Thomas was watching the monitor from 1:55 onward, and at 2:02 exactly. The screen went white, then gray, then nothing. He reviewed the footage from moments before each cutout. No one entered the bathroom in the 5 minutes prior. No one exited in the 30 minutes afterward, when the camera always came back online. The bathroom was empty when it cut out. Should have still been empty when it came back on. But paper towels were on the floor, and the faucet on the far sink was running. 3 weeks in a row, same faucet, same paper towels scattered in a rough semicircle near the trash can, as if someone had been standing there. None of the other hall cameras showed anyone entering or leaving. Thomas began to make a decision he would later describe as the worst of his career. At 1:58 a.m. on the 4th Tuesday, he walked to the men's restroom door and checked inside. Empty. Clean. Both faucets off. He left the door propped open with a rubber wedge and returned to the office. At 2:02, the camera went to static, and for the first time, in the silence following the static, Thomas heard something the camera had never captured because the camera was never live during those intervals, a sound coming from the direction of the bathroom, down the hall, faint enough that he almost convinced himself it wasn't there. He described it later as a kind of pressure. It's not quite footsteps, not quite a voice, but something with weight and intention. Something that moved through air the way a living body moves through air. He walked to the bathroom doorway. The rubber wedge was still in place. The door was still open. The lights were still on. The faucet on the far sink was running. All the paper towels were on the floor. And in the large mirror above the sinks, Thomas saw something. He has never described it in full to anyone, not to his wife, not to investigators, not to the 2 friends he told the story to over drinks a year later. Only ever getting as far as the words, "I saw something in the mirror," before changing the subject. What he will say, what he wrote in his resignation letter is this: whatever he saw in that mirror had been standing directly behind him. When he turned around, the hallway was empty. The rubber wedge was gone, and the bathroom door was closed. He walked out of the building, got in his car, and drove home. When investigators asked why he had waited for weeks before investigating in person, Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said simply, "I didn't want to know." A pause. Then, I think part of me already did. And that's where we leave you tonight. Not in the quiet safety of a locked room, but somewhere out there on a dark road, in the fluorescent hum of a place nobody chooses to be after midnight. If Derek, Melissa, and Thomas taught us anything, it's that the unexplained doesn't wait for the right moment or the right person. It simply arrives. If you felt something while listening tonight, something in the back of your mind that said, "I've felt that before," drop it in the comments. We read every single one. This is true. Terror Files Official. Subscribe if you haven't already. We post every night, and trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Until then, don't go looking for answers in places that were meant to stay quiet.